Donald Trump has confirmed that he recently held a phone conversation with Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. The confirmation came during a brief exchange with reporters aboard Air Force One, where the president acknowledged the call but declined to provide any additional information regarding its content, tone, or diplomatic significance. His remarks follow a series of statements and reports that have fueled heightened tensions between Washington and Caracas, particularly surrounding allegations of drug trafficking and the deployment of U.S. military assets in the Caribbean. The acknowledgement came after reporters asked the president about a New York Times report published 2 days earlier. The Times had stated that Trump and Maduro had spoken by phone and that the conversation included discussions about a possible meeting in the United States. When asked directly whether the report was accurate, the president said he did not wish to comment, but added the answer is yes. That statement marked the first public confirmation from the U.S. government that such communication had taken place. The president was then asked whether he could provide any details about what was discussed. He responded, "No, I can't do that." When a reporter followed up by asking whether the call had gone well, Trump replied, "I wouldn't say it went well or badly. It was a phone call." Those remarks were repeated more than once as reporters asked the same questions in slightly different ways, each time receiving the same direct but limited answers from the president. The brief exchange highlights the administration's careful approach to discussing the matter publicly. By confirming that the call occurred while declining to describe its content, the president signalled both awareness of the political sensitivity surrounding the communication and an intention to prevent speculation about the administration's diplomatic strategy. The broader context of this development involves a sharp escalation of rhetoric between the two governments. Over the weekend preceding the president's comments, Trump issued a warning on his Truth Social account, declaring that Venezuelan airspace should be considered closed. The statement did not elaborate on the meaning of the warning or its operational implications, but it came alongside new remarks suggesting that actions to disrupt drug trafficking operations linked to Venezuela could begin very soon. The administration argues that drug trafficking networks associated with Venezuela pose a security threat to the United States. U.S. officials have long accused Maduro of overseeing an alleged criminal organization involved in narcotics distribution, a claim Maduro denies. For several years, the U.S. has maintained sanctions targeting Venezuelan officials, institutions and sectors of the economy, with the stated aim of promoting democratic reforms and countering corruption. Maduro, for his part, has repeatedly accused Washington of using drug trafficking allegations as a pretext to justify political pressure, economic sanctions and military deployments. He argues that the United States is attempting to promote regime change under the guise of counter-narcotics operations. In recent statements delivered during political events in Caracas, Maduro emphasized that Washington's actions threaten Venezuelan sovereignty and regional stability. The president's confirmation of the phone call adds a significant new layer to an already tense situation. Direct communication between the two leaders is rare, particularly given the open political hostility between their governments in recent years. The conversation occurred at a time when U.S. military posture in the Caribbean is increasing and when public statements by both governments have contributed to a heightened climate of suspicion. The call's existence was first reported by the New York Times, which stated that the leaders discussed a possible meeting in the United States. The White House has not confirmed those details, and the president's comments neither verified nor contradicted this part of the report. By withholding information, the administration leaves open questions regarding whether the call was routine, exploratory, confrontational, or related to ongoing security concerns. During the brief interaction with reporters, Trump emphasized that he did not wish to comment on the call. Each time the reporter asked whether the conversation occurred, the president repeated, "I don't want to comment on it." The answer is yes. When asked for more information, he maintained, "No, I can't do that." When asked to characterize the tone of the call, he reiterated, "I wouldn't say it went well or badly. It was a phone call." The repetition of these statements underscores the administration's intention to maintain tight control over how the call is described publicly. Although the president acknowledged the call, U.S. policy toward Venezuela has not changed publicly as a result of the conversation. The administration continues to classify Maduro as heading an illegitimate government and continues to accuse him of involvement in criminal activity. Sanctions remain fully in place, and there has been no indication that any diplomatic or political concessions are under consideration. In addition to the president's remarks, statements from U.S. lawmakers have also contributed to the current environment. Over the weekend, Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin told CNN that the United States had given Maduro the opportunity to leave the country. Mullin did not specify when that offer was made, through which channel it was delivered, or whether it related to ongoing negotiations or earlier policy discussions. The administration has not publicly confirmed the senator's statement, and no further details have emerged. The combination of Trump's acknowledgement, Mullin's remarks and the administration's public warnings about Venezuelan airspace has generated speculation about whether Washington is contemplating new measures against the Venezuelan government. While no public announcements suggest imminent military action, the president's statement that efforts to stop Venezuelan drug trafficking on the ground would begin very soon has drawn significant attention. The phrase "on the ground" raises questions about whether the administration intends to expand cooperation with regional partners, intensify maritime operations, increase intelligence activities, or consider more direct actions. Without further clarification, the public interpretation of the statement remains open. For the Venezuelan government, the situation is framed differently. Maduro argues that the United States is using narcotics policy as a justification for military pressure. Venezuelan officials have described recent U.S. military deployments in the Caribbean as unilateral, aggressive, and part of what they view as a broader geopolitical strategy to weaken the Maduro administration. Caracas maintains that all allegations of narcotics involvement are politically motivated and deny any connection to criminal organizations. The political events in Caracas earlier in the year continue to serve as a backdrop for Maduro's position. During a political rally outside the Miraflores Palace on February 27, Maduro delivered speeches emphasizing his government's determination to resist foreign pressure. The administration argues that the United States uses international media coverage to shape perceptions of Venezuela and justify interventionist policies. On the U.S. side, President Trump's position reflects his administration's long-standing stance toward Venezuela. During his presidency, various officials have made public statements suggesting that all options were on the table regarding Venezuela's political crisis. However, the president has stopped short of openly threatening military action in recent days. The confirmation of direct communication between Trump and Maduro stands out given the broader political and military climate. For years, diplomatic engagement between the two governments has been limited. Contacts between lower-level officials have occurred intermittently, often related to humanitarian issues or efforts to secure the release of detained individuals. A high-level phone conversation, however, carries greater significance and raises questions about the motivations behind the communication. The president's refusal to characterize the call suggests a deliberate attempt to avoid signaling any change in approach by calling it neither good nor bad, but instead simply stating that it was a phone call. Trump leaves open the possibility that the conversation was routine or procedural rather than strategic. Meanwhile, Trump's Truth Social warnings regarding Venezuelan airspace continue to shape public discussion of U.S. policy. Declaring foreign airspace closed is an unusual public message without a clear precedent in recent diplomatic practice. The meaning of the warning is not explicitly defined in terms of operational rules, enforcement mechanisms, or immediate actions. However, the statement communicates heightened U.S. concern over Venezuelan aircraft movements and potential drug trafficking routes. It also highlights the administration's focus on counter-narcotics operations in the region. U.S. military and law enforcement activities targeting drug trafficking networks have historically involved coordination with regional partners and international agencies. The president's statement suggests that additional measures may be under consideration. The president's recent comments must also be viewed within the context of his broader national security priorities. Throughout his administration, he has repeatedly emphasized the need to counter what he calls transnational criminal organizations. Venezuela has been a central focus of these efforts, with the United States accusing Maduro and senior members of his government of involvement in narcotics trafficking. Maduro has denied all allegations and characterizes them as fabricated for political purposes. As tensions escalate, both governments continue to communicate their positions through public statements. Trump has issued multiple messages regarding Venezuela in recent days, particularly through his social media accounts. Maduro continues to speak at political events and in state media broadcasts, warning of what he describes as U.S. interference in Venezuela's internal affairs. The acknowledgement of the phone call between the two leaders does not clarify whether diplomatic channels are expanding or whether the communication represents an isolated exchange. Without further information, the significance of the call remains uncertain. However, the confirmation does establish that high-level dialogue occurred between two governments whose relations have otherwise been defined by sanctions, accusations, and political hostility. It also underscores the degree to which the situation in the Caribbean remains fluid. Regional governments are closely monitoring developments, as increased U.S. military presence can affect maritime routes, trade, and airspace management. At the same time, Venezuela's domestic political environment remains strained, with economic difficulties and internal political disputes continuing to shape Maduro's governance. The situation remains dynamic and complex, with the president confirming that the phone call took place, but withholding further details, and with both governments continuing to issue public statements about the other's actions and intentions, the broader regional environment remains tense.